Time for MacBreak Weekly. We're going to be joined by an actual developer. Justin Williams from Second Gear Software is here. Alex Lindsay, Andy Ihnatko, too, to talk about the latest from Apple, including that mysterious party they're planning for Saturday night. What could they be up to? Stay tuned. We'll find out.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 247, recorded May 17th, 2011, where bums go to bathe. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Today's mobile world makes easy-to-use collaboration software more than nice to have. It's a necessity. For your free 30-day trial, visit GoToMeeting.com and click the offer code MacBreak. And by Audible.com. To download the free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/MacBreak. And by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free 14-day trial, go to squarespace.com/MacBreak. And be sure to check out their annual plans for savings of up to 20% off. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show that covers your Apple needs in great depth and thoroughness. Joining us in studio, Mr. Alex Lindsay from the Pixel Core, pixelcore.com, for the Guild of Multimedia Artists, pixelcore.tv.
It's good to be here.
For the podcast. Hey, Alex, how are you?
It's good to be here.
You're always here.
I am.
Unless you're traveling.
I'm traveling next week.
Okay, so
I'll be in 35,000 feet over China.
Oh, wow.
I'll be going from Tokyo to Dubai to Dar es Salaam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this for work or for fun?
Work. I'm leaving on Thursday for Tokyo, and I'm there for a couple days, and then I'm gonna be flying out Monday night for Dar es Salaam, where I'm speaking,
Wow.
and then I'll be in DC, where I'm doing some more work. And then I'll be
Amazing.
back on the 2nd.
It's so interesting. We have people who have actual jobs on this show. When I hear about how people do their living thing, Andy Ihnatko, he's at home.
My home is my office. My world is my office.
It is indeed. It's good
There
to
is
see
no
you.
there is no point in which I do not have crushing responsibilities that weigh upon me heavily at every moment.
He is from the Chicago Sun-Times and also the celestial waste of bandwidth and a regular on MacBreak Weekly. We also welcome to our show somebody I think who was on once before, right? Jason Williams from Second Gear Software.
Oh, Leo, Jason, no, Justin.
Justin,
Come on.
who are you?
Who
Hi,
am I?
Justin.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I just saw the J and I went with it.
That's almost as bad as when people call me that teen pop star. Almost.
Justin Bieber is joining us. Tell me about Second Gear Software, my friend.
Okay, so secondgearsoftware.com is my quote-unquote job. I am fun employed as well, so I've been doing it for 5 years. We've got an app called Today, which is a calendaring app for the Mac,
Love
and then
it.
Elements, which is a Dropbox text editor
Love
for the
it.
iPhone and iPad.
Love both.
Lovely. I write with Elements all the time.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank
It's
you.
awesome.
Your check is in the mail.
So you're both a iOS developer and a desktop developer.
Yeah, I started on the desktop back when my parents questioned why I went to school, and then started a Mac software company. Who uses a Mac? And then it kind of paid. No one uses a Mac, but now the iPhone stuff's kind of taken off, so I'm doing it too.
Times have changed. So, gang, the big story is straight out of the Boy Genius, BGR, the Boy Genius report. Apparently, Thursday, the 19th, which is the anniversary of the opening of the first Mac retail store 10 years ago, something big is happening. We don't know
No
what.
one knows what it is.
But they're quoting some pretty big deal memos saying you're going to be working all night to 15 employees in each and every Mac store. There's something's going on. Any speculation? Could it be that we were wrong about iPhone 5 or 4S, I guess they're going to call it? Could it be it's actually going to come out Thursday?
Seems odd.
Yeah, it seems odd that they would do something without a big, flashy, here it is, here are the features. It also seems weird that they would just sort of slip it into stores and simply let people sort of find it. So
My guess would be more Lion.
Oh, you think Lion will come out Thursday?
If I was going to guess, I mean, it seems like they're pretty close. That
No.
they could. Nope, you don't think so? I'm trying to think of
no,
what else they would.
Well, like
release.
the cloud service. That would be the sort of thing where It's interesting enough that people would have to sort of find it. It would require a lot of training for the staff in order to use it. It doesn't require a lot of hardware shipments. And if it were really a tentpole feature, it would also jibe in with the idea of they're going to be blacking out the windows so that people can't see the new displays and the new things are going to be hanging in the windows.
They say they're gonna put curtains, black curtains up. That means there's something to see. That's something physical, right?
Assuming that's accurate, yeah. It really is a tantalizing collection of data points, because it's almost if you want to have that threat board behind you with every single thing that it could possibly be, and you simply CSI style start peeling off. Okay, so it can't be a new Mac because we've had new Macs. Can't be a new iPad. It's almost certainly not a new iPhone because that's too big. It's almost certainly not a new carrier because that wouldn't require new training. So blup 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 blup. And so Sherlock Holmes style, we're not. I don't think there are people who are saying that I believe that it's this because because that's what all the evidence points to. I think it's because we have eliminated everything it can't be, and it's pointing to just one of these three things.
I think it has to be BS. Let me read you what the Boy Genius report says. They say, we have heard from a solid Apple source, solid, but one, that Apple may be planning something big for its 10th retail anniversary, Thursday 19th. This is what they're saying. There's an overnight shift planned for 10 to 15 individuals at each Apple store to work from late Saturday all the way through mid-Sunday. But wait a minute, I'm confused. Oh, it wouldn't start Thursday, it'd be this weekend, I guess, even though the anniversary is Thursday. During the overnight shift, the Saturday overnight shift, it's going to be required that employees lock their cell phones in the main office. They'll also have to sign an NDA. There are a wide variety of roles, we're told, for the overnight shift, including all visuals staff, a manager, a business team member, a few Genius team members, one back-of-house employee, and a few generic Apple specialists. I'm already saying this is BS.
It's nothing. I think it doesn't make sense for them to do anything big when WWDC is 2 weeks away.
I think this is
it's a party.
BS story.
And Apple has never been one of those companies that does celebrate retail anniversaries or any sort of big anniversary. I think they did a 20th anniversary or 20 or 25th anniversary of the Mac poster, but they don't really celebrate anniversaries like, say, a Microsoft or another company would do.
10th anniversary of the store. Okay, they say Apple employees would be putting up black curtains at all stores so that people walking outside cannot see inside. Employees have had to download gigabytes of data from Apple corporate labeled training in a password-protected zipped folder that won't be accessible to managers until Saturday afternoon. Lastly, all Apple retail stores have mandatory meetings on Sunday, May 22nd. Most meetings are scheduled for the morning, but there are evening meetings as well. Either this is a completely bogus leak. I can't think of what the alternative
or
would be.
It could be prep for WWDC, which is only.
But why would they require 10 to 15 people in each store overnight?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't give that information to retail employees instead of actual employees in Cupertino. Retail employees are usually the last people that are going to know that stuff.
I think this is just bogus.
The other rumor I saw is that it might be near-field communication. They're going to implement that into the stores. But even then, no phone supports NFC yet other than, I think, the Google Nexus S.
Two Google phones do. I have one of them.
Yeah.
Use your Google phone at the Apple Store.
Use your Google phone at the Apple Store, but don't bother trying to use that iPhone 4 because we don't support it yet.
Yeah,
so
they won't do
BS.
that. I mean, I think they will do that concurrent with the release of a new iPhone. I think that would be interesting. I can't think of what this could be. I think this must be bogus.
They're putting out their summer fashions. That's all.
They're going from long sleeve T-shirts to short sleeve mock turtles. Yes,
that's right.
Even all the comments in the Boy Genius report, nobody can come up with what this could possibly be. I'm gonna call BS on this. I can't believe
it doesn't make any sense. It just seems so un-Apple to block out all the windows and do all. Yeah. I mean, it just.
Well, it depends on exactly what it's part of the frustration of covering Apple, because you know that everyone has a list in their heads about 8 different things that we're pretty sure they're working on, but there's no idea of when it could be released. Probably 4 things that could be released sometime in the next 8 months, of which 3 of them could require a window blackout. Again, if they're just going to be putting if they're going to be hanging new things in the window to say, hey, you've heard of that commercial you saw Sunday night for this new service. Well, here's where you can come in and take a look at that. I don't think it's BS quite yet, but I don't think the information is really thin on the ground. Usually, the weak point of any Apple secrecy is at the retailer level, and it's not. Let's say it's not unheard of for me to get information from people who work in Apple stores about stuff like this at a time. I haven't received anything like that so far. That doesn't mean anything, but it's kind of an interesting thing. I gotta say that I have marked out a section of my calendar to say be ready for something maybe happening that weekend.
I love the chat room. They say, "Oh, they're redesigning the Apple stores." This is exactly what I would expect from Apple if they were It's a brand new look. We're putting up black curtains.
Yeah, well, see that makes sense too, because you don't want to. I don't think anybody wants to. Apple is the one company that would absolutely not want camera phone pictures of workmen with ladders and scaffoldings inside their beautiful, pristine stores.
Yeah,
so it could be something as simple.
I think that actually makes more sense than anything else. So don't get your hopes up. It's just a new.
They're moving the tables.
Yeah, they're moving the tables.
People are just clamoring for some WWDC news, so they're trying to make something big out of this when really they're just going to redo the store. There's nothing to it.
We're going to take a break, come back. Let's find out about the what you guys expect for WWDC. Also, maybe we can collect all the rumors for the new Apple iPhone, which we now think will be called the 4S, and what features will and will not be included. We'll talk about that in just a second. Before we do, though, let's take a look at GoToMeeting, which now is kind of the ideal solution for your Mac, your iPad, even, dare I say it, for your Windows machine. If you're having a meeting, see, that's one of the beauty parts of it. And there are a lot of meeting solutions. Most of them aren't cross-platform, so that's one nice feature, is that you can hold a meeting and you don't have to care. Should you care? You shouldn't care what your client's running. You should hold a meeting, and your client should join that meeting, whether they've got the software installed or not, in just a click of the mouse. It should be easy for them, especially if you're doing a sales presentation. And that's what GoToMeeting is. Go try it right now. GoToMeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button. Use MacBreak as the offer code. GoToMeeting.com. Try It Free button. MacBreak.
I've been on GoToMeeting meetings every day this week.
That's nothing to celebrate, but it's better than what it could be.
It would be impossible. We have people in Japan. We're working, for this trip I'm going to. We have people in Japan, all over California, some folks on the East Coast, and we're all looking at the same presentation. We're all talking about what the issues are. We're all going through that stuff.
Great.
I don't know how we do it otherwise. I mean,
even if you're just doing a phone call, the neat thing is you can see. We even do this just for our phone. Anytime we're going to have a conference call, we just do it through GoToMeeting because you get the bridge. The conference bridge is free. There's a voice over IP bridge. In fact, if one of your customers or colleagues is using an iPad, they could just plug in their headset to the iPad and just use the VoIP built into the iPad, and it's a free GoToMeeting app for the iPad, and have the meeting. I've sat out in the backyard here and done it. It's really incredible. You'll dramatically improve productivity, streamline communication. You can schedule meetings ahead of time. You can even do it. It's so easy to do while you're in the middle of a call. You could say, look, I got to show you this. Collaborate on files and documents in real time. We start those meetings, and if we want to show people something, we can. Oh, by the way, they can show you, too, because it's a two-way street. So it's great for product reviews, demos, sales presentations, training sessions, status meetings, all right from your desk. Try it right now. Go to meeting.com, click the Try It Free button, use the offer code MacBreak. We thank Citrix, the folks who do GoToMeeting, for being such great supporters of our show. I want to have a parade when the new studio's done, from here to the new studio. And they said, we'll sponsor the parade. I think what we want to do is have banners for each show with the hosts of each show marching behind the banners, and might as well have a float for the sponsors.
That'd be great.
Just one float. It's a short parade. It's 2 blocks. World's shortest parade.
Have we gotten all the permits for it? This is Petaluma.
We don't know what date. We can't get a permit till we know the date. I'm thinking August.
Just reminding you, this is Petaluma.
I know. We got
a lot of permitting
for everything. Everything.
Maybe you should have your float just be a big screen in which people, clowns, bands, people throwing candy all through a GoToMeeting window. Just sort of Skype window.
A virtual parade. Yeah, maybe.
Marching band powered by GarageBand for the iPad. Just have people just walking with their iPads, just pushing buttons, playing music.
That's a great idea, an iPad marching band. That is a good idea.
Speakers.
We'll have to have a speaker in a wagon that you trail behind. Just
if you get enough people, those tiny little speakers, they become a bigger speaker.
Actually, we have 6. I have 6 Sonos S5 Zone players for the studio, because that's how you could listen to the shows, but you could also have music. And if we wanted to have a party, you could take them all and play the same thing. So we could just put them in the wagon, and that's 6 of those. That's a lot of sound.
That's a
wall of sound. I think we might need a special permit. The special The special Pete Townsend writer.
Or a lot of angry Western Petalumans. No one wants to deal with the Western Petalumans.
St. Vincent's does a parade every year.
Oh, I'm sure we could do it for 2 blocks.
With a little, they have the Pope, literally there's a Pope on a platform.
Egg.
And they have they have their little trumpet.
All I'm saying is butter and eggs.
Butter and eggs. That's all we're saying. So more evidence from Apple Insider just in that Apple plans something on Saturday. The latest report says that, no, we've already seen all this. Wait a minute. Oh, Mac Stories is reporting that Apple schedules store meetings at 7 a.m. on Sunday. You know what? More when I think about it, the more I think they've changed the inside of the store and they want to train everybody. Here's where you'll be standing.
They're adjusting the feng shui of the desks.
Here's where you'll be. Here's where you'll be standing. iCloud. Will we see an iCloud service soon?
It seems like it's coming. I mean, it has to come. I mean, I don't know exactly when. I think that's the big. It's not an if it's coming. It's a when it's coming. And I don't know whether it'll be iCloud, but they're going to do some kind of major update. They're running out of boxes for Mobile Me, right? I mean, so they're not. They're not.
It's been a couple of weeks since the report that they'd signed from Peter Kafka of All Things Digital that they'd signed licenses with 2 of the major labels.
And Apple was the only one that's really going through all this trouble, right? So
right.
Amazon and Google
said we don't need licenses.
Right. Which, if Apple can actually tie those all up, may give them some advantages and may not.
It's interesting. I would have said earlier that Apple was standing back and going to let Google and Amazon take the heat. Watch what happens with all the lawsuits because Sony and others are going to end up suing these guys and then step in. And remember, the record labels don't like how much power Apple has with iTunes. iTunes is the number one retailer of all music now. Too much power.
Right.
So I thought maybe this would be, but Apple may be cagey. They might be saying, "See, we're not so bad."
Right. I think
it could be worse. It could be worse. That side of the fire is hotter than this side of the fire. Yeah.
Right. I think the music labels are hoping that by signing these deals with Apple, they're going to be able to then push Amazon and Google into having to sign these deals as well because they see, well, look what Apple's doing with this. And if you want to do all this great stuff we've kind of allowed them to do, then pony up the cash, boys.
It's so hard, as anybody who's ever handled a firearm, Alex Lindsay, knows, so hard to aim when your target keeps jumping around like that.
Well, and I think that we were just talking about this on TWIM. It really feels like the record companies and Hollywood and everything else are sitting on a hot griddle, and they're surrounded, and it's just
another metaphor.
Which fire that they're going to
jumping around on the griddle.
But they're on a hot griddle. They know that what they're in is not working. They're burning up. But the issue is that there's a fire called Amazon, a fire called Google, a fire called Apple, a fire called Netflix, and none of those are particularly good for their businesses if allowed to. They're good for a new business model, but not the business model that they have. And they're desperately trying to how do we keep all of these different companies balanced so that none of them get enough power to run them over. The issue though is that these record companies and these movie industry any one of these companies could buy all of them.
Right.
They're no longer like the little technology companies.
Yeah.
They are the big technology companies. They're these
big
huge
industry.
Behemoths, and it's fascinating to watch these massive behemoths tiptoe around these Hollywood and the record industry because they really could just squash them if they got impatient.
Well, also Apple, actually we're in a very competitive age because now Apple has to look at reports this morning that Amazon is going to do 2 Android tablets, a dual core and a quad core. When you have somebody like Amazon, a big retail giant like Amazon, they can make a credible threat. The big issue, Apple on the iPad.
I don't think it's a power thing though. Dual core and quad core. It's going to be all down between functions and functionality. Or features and functionality. The thing is, yeah, sure they have that, but can they create one that's really usable?
Right.
Absolutely, yeah. If anyone can create a decent Android tablet, it's going to be Amazon because they have all the content in place. They've already got the music store. They've got movie rentals. They've got movie streaming.
They've got music.
Got that Amazon. They've got music, and now they've got the Amazon App Store. So they seem to be further along than Google is.
I think
Google just had those I/O announcements, but
yeah. But I don't think it's just the content. I think that the issue is I was watching my 2-year-old daughter was playing with an iPad last night. The first time I've really seen her playing with it, and watching how she organically is like noodling around with it and moving stuff around on World of Goo. There is something you have to get that tactile experience so right. and the iPad I think has it. I think that when I played with the Playbook, for instance, I don't think it had it. It didn't. I'm sorry, no, not the Playbook, the Galaxy.
The Galaxy.
It was a little behind. The Playbook was much.
Playbook is pretty snappy,
but everything's just.
But it
just
has no apps.
It has no apps, but it's snappy. But the point is that I think that a lot of them are missing that there's that last 2% or 3%. But I think that changes it for a lot of people.
That's what you've always said.
Okay. I think the problems that a lot of these makers are having is that the iPad is a Ferrari and they're trying to build a Lamborghini, whereas Amazon is the company that's going to say, you know what, I think there's room here for a Toyota. Let's make something that is not the most high performance thing. Let's make something that is not necessarily a pinnacle of engineering that will go into the time capsule that we send into space so that aliens see how cute, how adorably advanced we are. We're going to build the $119 one that will be the best $119 tablet anybody can buy. And because it costs $119, everybody will buy it. So that's why I think that they are indeed the biggest threat. Not only can they build these things to make them affordable, but they also make great stuff that's affordable. That's about as the $119 Kindle is a marvelous little device, and I'm sure that if they decided to build a $249 color Android tablet that actually ran apps, they would make sure that's totally focused on the things that people wanted to do, deliver exceptional value for the money, and it would probably be the most usable Android tablet anybody ever made.
It's interesting that Kindle, that $114 Kindle, is the best-selling Kindle of all of them.
Yeah,
it's already. I bought one. It was so cheap. I thought, well, I don't mind having a third Kindle. And I wanted to see what the ads looked like, how intrusive they were. And once you're in the book, it's exactly the same experience.
Right.
Yeah, I think forget Google, forget Facebook, Apple. Start paying attention to Amazon because they're the up and comers.
Yeah, they're very much like Apple in that they tend to pick and choose really carefully the sort of businesses they want to get into, and then they prosecute that intent so well. Whereas Amazon, everyone was watching the Google I/O conference last week, and there's they've got at least 7 balls up in the air, and I don't think they're really focused on anything except for search and ads at this point. Everything else, they do a lot of things extremely well, but you don't feel as though there's anybody at Google saying that it is absolutely essential that we get Google Chrome and Chromebooks so successful that it transforms the industry in 5 years. We know this is possible, and we're going to make that happen. It's just, okay, well, hello, Chrome division. Check back with us in a year. We'll see if you got
and you can't. And nowadays, you can't throw something out like that and not have it succeed unless you throw all your resources behind it and make it a hit. I think you're absolutely right.
I think the public picks up on how serious you are and how much you're personally investing in it. I think Google says that, okay, use it, don't use it.
It's okay with us.
Well, I think we
got money.
And the public, that Google cares about and Apple should care more about is this guy right here, the developer.
Well, but I think that isn't, and we. This is the question for the developer: is the issue? I think though is that when you have a bunch of people buying $120 Android apps, the question is how many apps are they? Is that really the market that's going to buy tons and tons of applications for it? I think that one of the things that Apple's taken advantage of is the fact that the raw sales of any of these tablets is not as important as the fact that the kind of person buying that tablet is the kind of person buying a lot of applications.
Right, and the biggest problem I had with the Honeycomb tablets, I was one of the 8 people who actually went out and bought a Zoom, is that there are no apps for it, and the app experience, most people don't think of it when they're in the store. That's what actually makes the iPad and the iPhone and even an Android phone that great.
But don't you see that as an opportunity then?
No,
as a developer?
I don't.
No,
not in the case of I think I would have it. Most people say that there's not really that much money in Android apps because Android people are expecting things to be free, which I tend to think is pretty true, but I tend to build apps that are more for nerds. So I pretty much, I don't try to target like your mom and your dad.
Android's a nerd platform if ever there was one.
I try to target the people that are like listening to this show or This Week in Google, and I think they'd be more than willing to pay $5 for something. But in my case, I don't have the resources to build for 4 different platforms. I build for the one I like and the one I have fun with.
I think that's the vast majority of the Apple ecosystem is developers who write for Apple because they love it.
Well, and most of I've talked to a lot of developers that are doing both of them, and what almost every developer has told me is that Android, they're making a lot of money building applications for corporations that want to deploy onto Android and want to make it. So that's where they make their money. On the iOS side, they're doing a little bit of that, but what they're really making more money on is actually retailing the applications that they're selling. So it's just it's two different worlds from their perspective.
That kind of makes sense, actually. Yeah. Have you put Honeycomb 3.1 on your Zoom yet, Justin?
No, I sent that thing back. No, when they
supposedly it's
announced
a lot better. Supposedly it's a big improvement.
No, but here's what happens. So if I spend $600 on a tablet to see how it is, and then a company is going to tell me that, oh, well, you'll get the update in a couple weeks behind the Verizon version of this. Oh, and by the way, the SD card is still not going to work. And by the way, only the Verizon one's going to get the movie store. I kind of threw my hands up and said, I'd rather buy a second iPad for that.
Yeah, you're kind of right. I like this Galaxy Tab. I've been using it more and more all weekend. The 10.1 Tab. It needs it's good. I think it could catch up. I think by the end of the year it could be a strong contender. And I agree with,
that's the problem with Honeycomb and with the Android tablets is not that it's a bad OS. It's kind of buggy and it's got some stuff that needs to be polished. But as an OS, I think it's pretty good. I wrote a giant review of this on my personal site where I said that pretty much I think that the Android tablets have a fighting chance as they improve the OS. But with them not getting any apps out there that are designed specifically for the tablet, that's where they're going to fault, because you can't just run giant versions of the phone apps and think that's a good experience. It's terrible.
Yeah, I think that one of the smartest investments that Google could make is to simply say, we're going to get out the checkbook. We got $1 million to spend to just flat out buy loyalty from developers. Simply say, we've seen this. They can even tell you, we really like that Elements app that you developed for the iPad. Here is $100,000. Please write us a word processor. And then go to other companies and say, we really like this outliner you've made for the iPad. Here's $250,000. Please build this for us. A presentation app. They just need to have that checklist of 6 apps they absolutely have to cover for tablets, and simply say, we don't care if we're going to be undermining other developers. At this point, we need to make sure we're serving the needs of the users who are looking for good apps for these tablets and not finding them.
I think that the only challenge, though, is that with the iPad and the iPhone, I think part of what I find so fascinating is almost anything I think of, just about everything that I go, oh, I need an app for this. There really is, like, you go searching and suddenly you find it. Now, it may not be the perfect solution, but it's just that massive reservoir of applications that are available.
Actually, there are going to be more apps available for Android by the end of this summer than there are on iOS.
Right.
I don't know if there's a lack of apps. There might be a lack of polish. There's certainly a lack of tablet apps. Although, unlike the iPhone, at least Android apps, the iPhone, they don't scale at all. They just say this is the form factor, and you could double it if you want, and it looks crappy. On Android, almost all apps will at least use the space, and depending on how smart the developers are, they'll scale to fill the space. It's not ideal, but it works okay.
Right.
I don't know.
But if you're spending $600 on a tablet, you don't want to run giant versions of your phone apps, because you may as well just buy.
But my point is, my point is they're not. In fact, things like Foursquare, which is clearly only written for a phone size thing. When you put it has big buttons. I admit, the buttons end up stretching halfway across, but you turn it in its portrait mode, and it works pretty well. I mean, it's doable. The maps are full scale. I don't know. I mean, I admit it's not there yet, but I think it's closer than maybe Apple realizes. And I think if Amazon jumps into this with an incredible ecosystem, maybe a little bit more mature Honeycomb, Amazon's already got some exclusives, in their App Store. They announced that not Angry Birds, Plants vs. Zombies and Chuzzle will be exclusive to the Amazon App Store, not in the Android marketplace. That to me is Amazon saying we're moving in. Get ready.
Exclusivity of Plants vs.
Plants
Zombies?
vs. Zombies. You can now, from an Android point of view, from a user point of view, that doesn't matter to me. I'll buy it in the Amazon store. I don't have to have an Amazon tablet. I can still buy it on any Android device. But what it's saying is we want to kind of own this ecosystem.
But here's the question: is if everyone starts doing that, doesn't that get into this whole crazy forking world of?
It does. It's already got a fork. It's very much it's already the forking world. Very much like the Apple App Store versus desktop apps. I want to ask Justin about that. Actually, I've got a lot of questions for the developer. It's time for Ask the Developer.
Ask the Developer. I'm still dreaming about this $100,000 Andy was talking about Google.
He's just staring at the corner.
Money.
I know I should have said 50,000.
Money. So
Money.
Justin Williams, Second Gear Software, we're going to ask you a couple of questions, including, have you received a lawsuit yet from Lodsys? But before we do that, you see, you spoiled the tease. Not yet.
But trust me, I've got plenty of opinions on this.
We'll talk about it and a whole lot more. Justin is here from Second Gear Software. Justin Williams, Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times, Alex Lindsay from the Pixel Corps. Me, I'm just your friendly announcer. Here to tell you about Squarespace.com, the secret behind exceptional websites. I'm getting excited. Squarespace sent us a new logo. I have a feeling the new Squarespace 6 is about to come out any minute now. I'm very excited about that. We've all talked about Squarespace. We use it. Alex, you use it for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's the secret behind exceptional websites. You can try it free right now. Just go to squarespace.com/MacBreak. You get hosting plus software.
And I think that's really important, that whole hosting plus software. I mean, if you're trying to put up your first website, or you're trying to put up even your, finally getting a site that actually works, and one of the big things that is always the whole, like, how do I install it? How do I upload it? How do I get this all onto some server, and what server, and colos? And you don't have to think about any of that. You just have to think about the site that you want. You load a template, you start working on it, and
trust me, yesterday I was in SSH hell, downloading the latest WordPress, downloading the latest updates to the plugins, and I'm going, why don't I use Squarespace? Well, I use WordPress because I guess I need to know about WordPress, so I use it on my personal blog. But I tell you, on our company blog, it's Squarespace.
And my personal blog is Squarespace.
Yeah, it's just so much easier. And plugins updated automatically. In fact, you always get new features, which is kind of fun. You log into your site and you go, oh, look at this. Now they've got a quick integrator, or they've got a Flickr integrator, or Picasso, or Twitter, or Facebook for all that social integration you like. And it's really cool. This is an example of how easy it is to use Squarespace. Take a look at the social widgets. For instance, here's the Flickr widget. You could choose between a slideshow. Photographers love this. Or thumbnail view. You can completely change everything just with sliders and clicks. So you don't have to. You really
are. You're dragging that widget in, and then you're moving a couple sliders, and then you're done.
Couldn't be easier. It's unique to your site. That's one of the things I like about Squarespace. Every site's unique, but it's easy. You don't need to know JavaScript or CSS to do amazing things. Now, if you do, the sky's the limit, because of course you can use JavaScript, you can use CSS. You can make a site that is just to die for, and then use that Squarespace hosting. You'll never run out of bandwidth. The price is right too. In fact, the longer term you sign up for, the better the deals. In fact, up to 20% off for the long-term plans. $12 a month, that's the basic, including hosting, including software. But the best thing to do is try it free. Click that big green button when you go to squarespace.com/MacBreak. You don't need a credit card. You don't need anything but the name of your site and a password, and boom, you're in. Designing a site, great way to give a friend or a family member, you've been kind of trying to get them on the web, design a site for them and say, here, I made it for you. Just use it now. A kid going off to school, a new baby, an event your organization's planning. It just couldn't be simpler. Squarespace.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly and all the Twit shows. They have just become, I just looked at the numbers, our largest advertiser, which we really appreciate. They're putting some.
They're very kind to both Twit and
they're good. Yes. I like them. I like them. All right, Lodsys, Lodsys. Basically, I don't want to slam them, but they're being accused of being a patent troll because
they're patent trolls. Let's just say it.
Let's just say it, patent troll.
They're just patent trolls.
They claim that they have the patents for in-app purchases and/or App Store purchase links in the apps, and they have gone after the smaller iOS developers. Not going after Apple
because they would be crushed.
Well, Lodsys says Apple is already a licensee, as is Microsoft and Google. So they say Apple's licensed it, but what about you, Justin Williams? What about you?
Yeah, this is the part where this is really scary for me, because at present time, I think there's about 12 developers that have gotten these letters. I mean, some of them, the one that's the biggest one out there is James Thompson, the guy who makes PC Calc, which is a really great calculator app for the iPhone. Patrick McCarran, who's a guy I know who does a Shanghai Mahjong app. And then just today, the Twitterific guys at the Icon Factory got their letter. And it seems like this is all just centered around in-app purchases. So Lodsys thinks that by having this in-app purchase ability to upgrade from a free version to a paid version, they deserve a percentage of your revenues, even though you're using Apple's APIs.
Now,
which, in theory, though, the problem with this is that as a developer, we tend to believe, and I would assume that Apple would think that if they did actually license this, that they would believe that their license would cover us for this. And Lodsys is instead saying, well, even if Apple did kind of give us some money, their license can't, they actually said this on their blog, they can't spray pixie dust on the entire development community, so let's go after these little guys who definitely do not have the money to fight a patent suit and say, well, you can either go to court for hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you can pay us a couple thousand and we'll go away. So it's a racket. They're trying to just shake money out of us.
They want 0.575% of U.S. revenue. So they point out, well, if you make $1 million on in-app purchases a year, you would owe us $5,750. It's not a huge amount of money.
Right, but that's the start. So if you've actually looked at their patents, which I'm definitely not a patent attorney, and I was bored to tears reading this thing, but you have to, it's so vague and it's something from so far ago, and nothing in it seemed like it was some sort of like great innovation. It was nothing that you couldn't just think of on your own and build eventually without even looking at their patent. And you have to imagine that there's other people out there that have similar patents, not necessarily for in-app purchase, but for other functionality in mobile apps. So if Lodsys wins this, then you're going to be getting calls from patent guy X or patent guy Y saying, oh, well, we want our share too. And then it just becomes a really hard proposition to make money on iOS when all these different people are coming at your pockets.
Seems like Apple should do something about this, because this hurts them as much as it hurts the little
seems like
developers.
they should be suing Lodsys for clarification.
Right. Yeah. My theory on this, based on what I've read, is that if Apple has licensed this from Lodsys, as they say they have, I believe that Apple probably thinks that their license covers the entire App Store ecosystem, and Lodsys doesn't think that, and they think that everyone should have to license it no matter what the developer is. And it's probably going to have to go to court, and it's going to cost everyone a lot of money, and then we're going to sit around and wait and kind of wonder. I mean, in the interim, what this has done for me as a developer is that I'm not using any in-app purchases right now.
And you sure as hell don't plan to, do you?
I had plans to use it for some stuff I've been working on, but there's no chance in hell I'm using it right now until all this is cleared out. So the best thing Apple could do is come out and say, this is what's happened. This is what we're doing about it. This is what we advise you to do. The worst thing they could do is give us the Cupertino silence and say nothing.
I'm trying to, I'm trying to remember precedents for this. Of course, every developer uses libraries and APIs provided by the company that makes the hardware or the operating system. That's really standard practice. Microsoft has a whole bunch of libraries that every developer uses. And you would think that if this really opens a can of worms, because if I'm liable because I used a company API or a company toolkit, provided toolkit, if I'm liable for the licensing of that toolkit to a third party, as you say, Justin, this is a never-ending.
I mean, the overarching problem of this is the whole idea of software patents, and I'm definitely of the belief that software patents are a terrible thing for this industry. And I think this has a definite ability to make things go a lot worse. If people are actually able to pay Lodsys and set a precedent, then I think we're going to be in for a really bad time as people who applied for these pie-in-the-sky patents back in the early 90s come out of the woodwork and say, hey, we thought of this idea. We didn't actually implement anything, but we're sitting on the toilet one day and we just thought, hey, that'd be a good idea someday. And then 20 years later, hey guys, pay up, give me some cash.
We talked to Dan Bricklin about this, the creator of the first killer app, VisiCalc, and he wrote a very long, thoughtful piece on his blog. We talked to him last Wednesday on Triangulation, and he said he's essentially in favor of software patents. I think maybe the issue is not software patents, but just the implementation, that the USPTO grants a patent to anybody, doesn't really do much due diligence on it. And it just kind of waits for the courts to determine if there's prior art, as opposed to saying, hey, let's see your implementation. Let's, prove to me that you own this. Prove to me that you were the first. They just say, yeah, whatever you say. That sounds good.
The biggest problem is, number one, is that they're not showing an implementation. So the guy who, Lodsys wasn't the people who actually made this patent.
No, and we should say we may use the word patent troll. The politically correct term is they're a patent holding company.
Yes. So they bought these patents for a giant lump sum.
I'll hold that patent for you, sir.
I'll hold this patent for you. And the guy who created the patent, he didn't actually build anything. So number one,
he shouldn't have a patent.
If you're going to have a software patent, you need to show something that's actually been built. Number two, the technology industry moves way too fast for a 20-year patent.
Right.
These things should be lasting for maybe a year, maybe 3 years. And in my case, though, I think that software developers all learn and copy from each other. They don't necessarily steal things, but if you look at Delicious Library and you look at iBooks, I mean, somebody
stole something there.
Yeah, and you didn't see someone like Will Shipley patenting the idea of laying out books in an app on a bookshelf.
He was a little miffed, but he didn't have a patent on it.
Right, and I think that the entire software industry has built on somebody does something, and the next guy is a competitor, then goes on and improves it. I mean, there is a fine line you have to dance between blatant copying and innovating. But I think in the overall, I think that if you're innovating and you're building stuff, and you're not just copying, like you would say, a Samsung Galaxy S copies an iPhone, I think it's good without having to go through patents.
Well, there's another story. We'll see that one in about 10 years from now, that lawsuit will be. I'm not a patent lawyer. I'm not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination. My understanding of the patent system is that it's to promote openness. It's to promote the notion that if you come up with something really good, there's a trade. You expose, by publishing a patent, you expose how you did it, and you get, in return for letting the world know how you did such a thing, you get an exclusive rights to it for a little bit of time, and then the world gets to do it. And it works in cases of big pharmaceuticals, for instance. We have a whole generic pharmaceutical industry because the big pharma is allowed to patent how they made that medicine, reap the benefits of that for 20 years, for a limited amount of time, and then the generics come out, and society benefits, instead of having it be a proprietary secret that nobody can ever know. So there is, I think, some merit to the idea.
I think one of the real challenges is that, when you start getting to this idea of patenting ideas, is that we're moving from where we made stuff to where the entire society, I mean, this huge part of the economy is ideas. And when we start having all these crazy patents, it's like basically having toll roads every 3 miles. Oh, you want to take a right there? Oh, there's a toll road there. Oh, you want to do a left here? There's a toll road there. I mean, it's almost like
the alternative to it is trade secret. The alternative is we don't reveal. So you have a choice.
And that's how we do it. Like, for instance, we have when we do our keying, there's some magic sauce in how we do green screen keying.
Well, that secret may be lost forever because you chose not to patent it.
And we did, but our concern was, as soon as we show how that works, we ran across something that was pretty original, and we were concerned that someone else would just take it. So we're too small to defend it.
That's why patents are there. It's to encourage people like this son of a bitch to tell people their trade secrets, but be protected for a little while. And that makes sense to me. You've chosen to keep it completely secret. I don't blame you.
And then what we'll do is, as soon as we're done with it, we'll open source
relies on your goodwill and down the road open sourcing. And so many things are lost that way.
Right.
And that's the whole point of this patent system, is to encourage people to share. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I agree with you. There's definitely systemic problems that we're running into right now.
But you have little companies like us, the amount of money that we put into to building a patent, protecting a patent, putting that all together would be very difficult for a small company to make work, and it's easier just to keep it secret.
Right.
And then you have these patent trolls on the other side. I mean, this is just an example of why the patent system doesn't work anymore.
The other issue that you're running into is that you were talking about the pharmaceutical industry, and in those industries, these are big companies that are going after one another, that have lawyers on staff. They're making billions of dollars. When you see Apple suing HTC or Apple suing Samsung for patent infringement, those are big companies. What Lodsys is doing is they're going after small companies like my company or the Icon Factory, who can't afford to pay a $700 an hour patent attorney. So if they can, instead of suing Apple, they can sue a couple hundred small-time developers and get, let's say, a couple $1,000s out of each of them. Well, they've made a pretty good payday for writing a couple letters.
I have to point out, though, that if you eliminate software patents, you're still going to have companies with deep pockets litigating against companies who don't have the resources, because even if there's no merit to the litigation, they can win. I mean, if you really want to stop that, you eliminate litigation, and I don't think that's a good solution either. I mean, the whole idea of having a system is that you have some fair way of figuring these thorny problems out.
I think the what's broken right now is deciding what is patentable and what gets through the patent system. If
we
those
just
things
obviously
were tighter,
have a crappy PTO.
Well, I mean, but that's the junk in, junk out. So the thing is that
patent inspectors are not paying any attention.
Well, they're not equipped with the technical knowledge to understand what they're looking at. I mean, I think that's the biggest issue.
I think that's what we need to do. Is not necessarily scrap the system, but get better patent inspectors, maybe better rules about this and so forth.
I don't know. But the thing we got to do is we have to wait. Apple needs to say something about this. This came out on Friday morning of last week, so I'm going to try to give them until the weekend to say something. But if this goes on up until WWDC, that's going to be the talk of the show for developers, at least.
That's what was high on my mind. Most of the letters that they've been sending out has asked for a response before WWDC, which is the first inkling I had that they did not make a colossal tactical error in waiting till after WWDC, because they're going to have Apple employees and every single significant iOS developer in the same building together for several days. And the real danger to that for this patent company is that all these people can have all kinds of conversations for which there will be absolutely zero paper trail. So that if there forms a consensus, or if there wants to be some sort of a sub rosa conversation about here's how here's how we're going to respond to this, don't worry, we're going to slap them down and slap them down hard. That's exactly the best environment for that sort of conversation to happen. It won't happen on message boards. It won't happen through email. It'll happen through these casual face-to-face conversations. So I'm really curious to see what happens after WWDC, if there's a whole change to the posture of what all these developers are going to react to this.
I think really
Lodsys is also suing Samsung, Brother, HP, and Motorola. So.
But again, those are big companies versus small guys like the Icon Factory.
I think they're not just picking on the Icon Factory. This is a wide.
But that made me think of something else. I mean, is the pressure they're putting on small developers largely just a way to put additional pressure on Apple to say, well, we could just simply sell you a larger license that would include and incorporate everybody who uses your development platform? Is that part of their strategy? I don't know.
I mean, that's what I was thinking, is just pressing, like they don't feel like they got as much as they could have out of Apple if they actually did an agreement. We don't know. We haven't seen the agreement. We have no idea whether they actually have an agreement with Apple. Maybe all of this is to just pressure Apple to if maybe Apple doesn't have an agreement yet, and they're trying to pressure them to do that. I think what really Lodsys should do is reach out. I think at WWDC they should bring their lawyers, they should bring the principal holders, and they should come to WWDC, and they should meet at a bar.
That's actually a good idea.
To talk about it, and I'm thinking
that would imply that the company actually actively wanted to seek a solution.
I'm going to suggest some really excellent places in the Tenderloin.
There's some good bars.
Tenderloin,
by the way, for those who don't know San Francisco geography, is kind of the soft white underbelly of San Francisco.
And remember, the best way to travel throughout San Francisco is alleys.
Yeah.
Dimly lit.
Exactly.
Really, they turn off the lights because they know there's going to be a lot of high traffic there.
And what I would do is, so people know that you're coming. You're really coming. You should turn Glimpse on,
yeah.
and go. And then you want to take these little back alleys through the Tenderloin, and whoever makes it to that bar, then we can actually then have.
Oh, it's kind of the Darwinian patent system. Actually, Apple, according to The Guardian today in an article, says that Apple is, quote, actively investigating the merits of this. So I think you're right. I think we'll hear something from Apple on this.
It just takes time. It's like the location stuff. They took a week to respond to it. But when they responded, I think most people thought what their response was pretty good. And I can only hope that they're going to give us a good response, say, this is what this happened, this is why it happened, and this is what we're going to do, or this is what we advise you to do.
Yeah.
As long as they do that, I'll be happy.
Well, as you point out, Justin, it has a chilling effect because you're not going to put in-app purchases in until you hear some resolution on this.
Yeah, I'm not touching that stuff with a 10-foot pole.
Fortunately, you don't need to, but
I do think it's important that Apple, if they think that they're in the right, they should be merciless about whatever they do legally. I mean, they should, pound this country.
When has Apple ever shown mercy?
I know. Well, I mean, the thing is that I think that this is really important for them to make sure it's clear. Not only are they going to handle this, but they're going to, really make this expensive. I think that's probably what they're considering is which tactical nuke they would like to employ here. They're looking through the library across the across the front there, because I think it is important for them to defend their developers and have people get clear that if you pick on our developers, you're picking on us, and we're going to take
the
it
App
personally.
Store is a big business for Apple, and getting developers to be concerned to use the platform because of pending patent infringement letters coming in is definitely not something they want. It's definitely not something any mobile platform provider wants.
Well, and I think we're really fortunate this conversation is happening now, because I think that in-app purchases, both from the Mac App Store and the iOS Store, are going to become massive.
I'll tell you, if you're a publisher, they're huge, because I was thrilled because now I can get the New Yorker, and because they were able to do in-app purchases instead of having to download a new magazine every week, because I'm a subscriber, I can get it for free. Well, so there's a huge benefit to having in-app purchases.
If you imagine a company like Adobe, I'm not saying, let's say they built a little version of Photoshop.
Not that you know anything.
No, I don't. No, this is like, I'm totally making this up. Okay. So, let's say that they had like a little editing app, image editing app or whatever, and they started all the plugins that Adobe makes. What if you could buy all those plugins, right inside of Photoshop.
Just what you need. It would be great.
And you wouldn't have to go anywhere. You wouldn't have to, and that could turn into a massive business. You get to a point where you sell the core, you give away the core app and sell all the add-ons and everything else. And I think it could be massive, but it won't. This has to be sorted out, and it's fortunate that's happening now rather than suing when everyone's got their feet deep into the cement.
Hey, Justin, I meant to ask you, you use Dropbox. Elements uses Dropbox, which is really the thing that puts it over the top for me. But that and its good looks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful application. But you saw that there's a little frou-frou going on about Dropbox. They're being accused of lying, essentially. As we found out a couple of weeks ago with the change of service license, that Dropbox will turn your data over to federal or state or local government officials if required to do so. That's pretty normal, except that Dropbox was telling us for a long time, we don't have access to your data because you encrypt it and we don't have the keys. It's obvious now that Dropbox does in fact have the keys.
Oh, you mean this key?
Yeah. Oh, that key. That
this
key.
one you were speaking of.
Oh, yeah, we have that key. And so now they're being accused of lying about the fact that they didn't have access to your data. And I think there's some legitimate concerns that maybe Dropbox didn't want us to know that they, in fact, could look at anything we post on there. You use Dropbox for your program. I mean, what's your thought on that?
I think there's a trade-off when you use these cloud services like Dropbox or Google Docs or Box.net, in that whenever I use these things, I don't assume that I have full privacy, and I'm willing to give up a little bit of that for the convenience. I mean, I haven't followed this enough to actually say what Dropbox was saying and what they said now, but I mean, in my case, it's not anything that makes me be outraged that much, because I always have assumed that they have access to my stuff just because it's on their servers. I mean, there has to be a way for them to get at it.
I think this only bites people who believed Dropbox when they said, no, we don't have access to your data. And so we're putting data on there that was...
When you're offering a service for free, and obviously they do have a paid account, but in general, it's a free service. And when you're offering something for free, there is some sort of trade-off like this. So it's nothing like this shocks me anymore. I always assume that if I'm signing up for a free service, I'm the thing that's being sold.
Right. It's not, in this case, they're not selling it to marketers or anything. It just, they don't, if you wanted to encrypt it, you should encrypt it before you send it to Dropbox, because the key that they give you to encrypt your data, which, they're very proud of, it is in fact in their possession. And it's pretty obvious to anybody who knows about crypto that had to be the case.
I think it really comes down to how important it is to have really good communications majors keeping track of everything that leaves the company and goes into the company, because I don't tend to think that this is just my take on it, but I don't tend to think that they were trying to deceive people into thinking that there's a level of privacy that wasn't there. I think that within the company, they understand the difference between, well, it would be really, really difficult for us to for anybody to get access to individual users' data, but they don't appreciate the difference between saying that and saying that, no, it's not possible for anybody inside this office to get access to people's data. But I think that we also need to help educate people as cloud services become more prevalent, that there is on the internet and there is not on the internet. If your information is not on the internet, it can't be accessed, or probably can't within normal means. If it is on the internet, doesn't matter that it's not on a web page, doesn't matter you didn't link to it, doesn't matter that it's in a Box.net or Dropbox or your Google Docs or anything like that. Assume that it can't be compromised. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I don't even particularly like online backup systems, because it's, God, if you have access to if someone gets access to my entire hard drive, that's everything. That is everything I'm thinking, everyone I'm doing business with, everybody I've ever told, don't worry, I will absolutely never tell this to anybody else. And that's an email that could be somewhere out there. Again, there's on the internet and there's not on the internet. And really, it's just that simple.
I agree with you. I tell everybody, if you put it on the internet, assume that it's not private.
And of course, the danger when you do that is not being able to get to it where you're, no matter where you are. I mean, that's our big advantage.
Well, that's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off. You just have to, the trade-off is every time you use your credit card, someone's tracking it. Every time you,
so it's good for us to know.
It's good to be,
It's a lesson learned for the Dropbox guys. I mean, I can't really think of anything they've done too terrible since they've been around. This is kind of the first kind of negative publicity
Well,
they've
they
had.
shouldn't have said we don't have access. when they
Right,
when they do
but what they've done is they've learned from this lesson, and so they're going to go on and improve it. And it wasn't really, I don't think that what they did was with malice. I don't think that they actually intended to deceive people. I just think it was probably nerds trying to explain things in common terms, and we nerds aren't always that great at explaining stuff sometimes.
They just left out the clause that said except if somebody wants to know.
Gun and badge equals yes, sir. Here's their data, sir.
Here's your data. Hewlett-Packard has decided not to put Thunderbolt in its next desktop PCs, instead opting for USB 3.0. According to HP, we did look at Thunderbolt. We are still looking into it, but we haven't found a value proposition yet. USB 3 has more installed devices. Is that a blow to Thunderbolt?
I don't think so. I think that. Well, I mean, I think that at the beginning,
does anybody care what HP does?
No, not really. I think that the thing is that Thunderbolt, I believe, and from what I understand of the two formats, is that it's going to have a lower CPU hit. It's faster. The way that you're chaining the devices together.
Is Thunderbolt to USB 3.0 as FireWire was to USB 2.0? In other words,
it's more like FireWire was to USB 1. So I think that's the issue. And the problem with USB is that there's just a lot of overhead, a lot of CPU overhead that we know.
It's also not peer-to-peer. Is Thunderbolt peer-to-peer, or is it?
I understand that it.
Master-slave system, because that's USB requires a smart device on one end and a dumb device on the other end. FireWire did not. You could FireWire two cameras together, for instance.
Right.
There was a peer system. I wonder which Thunderbolt
I don't know the answer to that.
Our chat room probably does, and will tell me in moments.
But the thing with Thunderbolt is that there's no devices for it yet, which is probably what I assume HP is saying, is that there's no devices for it yet. And I don't really consider a Windows user that goes into a Best Buy. I don't think that you can sell them on, hey, well, there's this port on the back that really does nothing right now, but someday it might. Whereas with a Mac guy, we can say, well, eventually this is going to play out really well. And people that use Macs will say, oh, cool, this will make me have a more future-proof Mac that's going to last for several years down the road, assuming people actually
something else.
And also realize that when Apple put the Thunderbolt port on the MacBooks, they really didn't have to do anything except for simply say, this mini display port, it's still a mini display port, but in a few months' time, it will do things other than be a mini display port. Whereas HP, they already have a VGA connector for that sort of stuff. And I think that it would be sort of an interesting, it would have to be a different commitment on their part. Also, I think they realize there's really no rush to embrace Thunderbolt. It's Thunderbolt. It's more of a 2012 feature, even for Mac people, than a 2011 feature.
Yeah, I think the folks that are going to really benefit from Thunderbolt in 2011 are going to be video professionals in the second half of the year. When you look at the video and photography professionals specifically, or anyone needing to move that kind of data, I think it's going to make a massive difference for them. But I think that those are the primary benefactors. Then we'll have to see what happens after that.
I wouldn't be surprised if you could make Thunderbolt support USB 3.
Yeah, I bet you there's going to be a little dongle that has a Thunderbolt connector and a USB 3, and you'll just be able to pop your USB 3 in, and then you don't have to think about it.
USB 3 is such a PC technology, isn't it? I mean, it just sounds like it belongs on a Windows machine.
Well, it's funny that it really became that because Apple was the first computer to install USB.
Right. And the iMacs, the early iMacs.
Then we got into this tug of war between FireWire and USB.
And SCSI.
And SCSI.
The late lamented Mr. SCSI.
Hey, I picked up a drive. I was like, I wonder what's on this drive. And I looked at it. I was like, oh, it's SCSI.
I guess I'll never know.
Yeah. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with that.
You can get, we know. Don't send me an email. I know you can get something to make it work. But so let's see.
I need some way to look at my iOmega drives. My little iOmega.
Zip
you remember
drives.
the zip drives?
Yeah. Well, you need a parallel port.
Yeah.
Apparently, according to Mac in rumors.com, Apple has trademarked the name for a new app. This just in. Actually, it's from Patently Apple via Mac Rumors. Noteworthy. Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Ooh. Uh-oh, yeah.
What? Patently.what.com?
I can get you Google's phone number for that. We'll help you out here.
Uh-oh. Now, remember, Apple trademarks a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean they're going to make it. Apple's latest trademark for Noteworthy points to new iPhone app. Initiates scanner mode, capture images of surfaces, send images to stitching module. It's European Trademark Office. Sounds like maybe it's
Evernote clone.
Yeah, maybe it's more a threat to Evernote. I wouldn't be surprised. Microsoft's done very well with OneNote. There's definitely a market in the tablet space for note-taking apps that use stylus. Now it looks like it's a scanner, which wouldn't really wouldn't hurt Elements at all, Justin. So
good. Okay. Well,
breathe a sigh of relief.
We don't need to call Google yet. Not yet. So yeah, this is probably looks like it's another thing that the mythical North Carolina data center is going to solve. A cloud-based note and capture apps for the
There's
iPhone.
somebody inside Apple who's just spinning this stuff out. Like it's the disinformation guy. Oh yeah, let's get a patent for this, and we'll pretend it's going to North Carolina, and I just think that they are having so much fun with us right now.
Well, and I think that they get into a situation where they have to, because of these patent trolls,
patent everything.
They patent every idea that they have, so that somewhere down the road they want to use it. They can say, "Well, we already talked about that."
When you have a building full of lawyers, you might as well. You got to give them something to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that it's always funny to read that site, but it's just I think it causes more confusion than clarity.
On the other hand, I think Apple would make a lot of sense to add a note-taking program to iWork. That's a very hot category that Apple isn't really fulfilling. I know you don't like it, Justin, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, I'm aiming for a different market than the note-taking market in essence. But I mean, for the iPhone version of Elements, it's a really great notes app. But for the iPad, I'm aiming more at people like Andy who are trying to write long-form stuff than just wanting to jot down my grocery list.
Good.
I think most people would be happy if they just made the notes feature in Mail actually work well. I don't know anybody who's happy. The Mail has so many features that outside of just its namesake features. I don't know many people who are really happy with any of them.
Yeah.
I got into this research and I tried to figure out the best note-taking app for like the iPad, and I find that all of them are just kind of like so close, but none of them. I wanted to have the really, really good. I want it to look good when I'm writing on it, but I want to type, but I don't type that often on it. What I really want is to have it be something that's a really nice experience. That it's doing some.
You want to have typing, or do you want to have just kind of like
so penultimate
drawing.
In my opinion is probably the best image writing quality if I want to do it with my finger or a little stylus. You got to look at
Note Taker HD. This is Dan Brookland's program. He came on and talked about it.
Well, here's also my issue.
It's kind of deep, and that's part of the problem. It's hard to figure out what it can do.
Yeah, I have it right here.
You do
Note Taker. Yeah, and so the problem with Note Taker is that it doesn't the quality of the when I'm actually writing isn't nearly as high as penultimate.
You could pop up a window, a bottom window that you can draw, and then it is small. You should.
I'll check it out.
It's kind of it's opaque, unfortunately.
Well, what I'm saying is like when you look at this quality.
No, I know. Pop up a text. You need to pop up the bottom text window.
All right.
And then you can anyway.
What I found though is that it didn't feel like it wrote as well. But then the other thing that I really want is to have audio. I wanted to record the audio while I'm taking notes. So I had one of those little, and having that feature really work well for meetings is just massive.
That's huge.
And if I could just have those two things together, and I don't want it to do a lot of things. I just want it to do those two things, where I can just tap on the words that I was writing while I was in the meeting, and it plays back the audio. And there's a lot of people that do those things. It's just that with note taking, it doesn't seem like they're all coming together.
Yeah, that's a category that's always disappointed me. That's the reason why whenever I'm at events, I always have one paper notebook in my shirt pocket, a second paper notebook in my laptop bag, and maybe I'll have the ambition that this new app that I downloaded for my desktop or my iPad a couple weeks ago will be finally the one where I could actually follow along, and if I accidentally mistype something, I'm not going to screw everything up and not be able to get back into the moment that I want to start to record in. It always comes down to I'll either write it. The pen is the only one that will not make any mistakes. I've actually been using the LiveScribe pen off and on and finding that it's a nice little hybrid between it's the one recording device that will always allow me to make notes where I want them, plus giving me the added advantage of maybe I can actually get them back in some sort of a digital format later on.
And the LiveScribe is exactly, which I have, is exactly what I want on an iPad. I just want that experience that I have with LiveScribe without the paper part and the pen part.
Interesting. Let's do a couple more stories, and we're going to get your picks of the week. Apple will be at Book Expo to promote iBookstore. It's the first time Apple's appeared at the big. It's not Book Fair, but it's one of the big book shows, right, Andy?
How's iBookstore doing?
I don't know. It's so crappy. I mean, in terms of selection. I like its
that's the
interface.
problem. I want
there's nothing in it.
The quality of the experience is better in my opinion.
Oh, it's a great
than my
experience.
Kindle app.
Yeah.
But it's just I can never find the books that I want.
Yeah, I think the iBookstore has two big problems. One is that selection that just doesn't have that slam. It doesn't have the idea that I'm going to go to the store, and if this book I want is not available in the store, then I know it's simply not available. It's no, I should have gone to the Kindle store to begin with. And the second problem is that you know for a fact that all these books that you're buying, and I can buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of books a year, will only ever be readable on Apple devices. And I know that Amazon is absolutely agnostic and ecumenical when it comes to device independence, that they're going to essentially any device that I will ever have will at some point have a Kindle client, as long as it's not made by RIM, of course. But I will always have the $100 book reader. I'll be able to read it on my $1,000 notebook. I'll be able to read it on my $500 iPad. There's very, very little upside to me to buying anything through the iBookstore.
iBooks is also inconvenient in that one of the great things about the Kindle, besides it being platform agnostic, is that if I'm just walking down the street and someone mentions a book to me, I can go to the Amazon Kindle store on my phone and do it. Or if I'm sitting at my desk and somebody recommends a book to me, I just go to Amazon and Safari or Chrome on my Mac. With the iBooks, I have to launch the iBooks app on my iPad or my phone and do it. There's not that ubiquity of being on every different device, but it's also not available to access even through iTunes or the web.
Well, I know what we were going to talk about. iPhone rumors, the 4S. I don't know what they are. What are the rumors? It's going to have a little bit, teeny weeny bit bigger screen.
It's going to go, edge to edge, I guess, on the...
No, the phone won't be bigger.
sides.
The bezel will be smaller.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, I think the screen's bigger, but the phone is the same size.
Right.
It's going to have a bigger screen, and then it's going to have I think they said it's going to have a teardrop design where like the back is going to have like an angle to it, I guess.
They're calling it the unicorn teardrop design. It's very exciting. Yeah. Bad joke. Thank you, Andy. That was it.
The only thing that I think
everything
people
you
know
say is funny,
gonna,
Leo.
He wants his
the only thing people know that it's going to have an A5 chip like the iPad 2 has, which is going to be great because now that I have an iPad 2, my iPhone 4 is so slow.
Oh, that's interesting. You noticed that.
I noticed it.
Oh, I notice it all the time now, which drives me nuts because up until 3 or 4 weeks ago when I got my iPad 2, my iPhone 4 is the fastest thing ever.
It's funny how relative it is.
I think that
I think that the speed hit is for me on the iPhone is the idea that it's this tiny little keyboard, this tiny little screen that I still have to navigate, and you could give me an i7 processor and it would still be a lot slower than the iPad. I've never noticed a speed difference between those two.
I can type fast. You could type fast on the iPad, Andy?
Using the virtual keyboard, I can get about 40 to 50 words per minute.
Wow.
Oh, I can get that on the iPhone. I can't type for anything on the iPad, though. I have to use a Bluetooth keyboard.
I actually find it easier to type on the iPhone.
Really?
Like if I'm sending back people emails, it's the funniest thing is that I'm like, I'm rather just do it on my iPhone and I'll write really long
emails. Do you do
emails.
thumb typing or tap with your forefinger?
I do tap with my finger.
Tap like that.
I just have an index
Two
finger.
thumb jockeys, my friend.
Yeah,
this is the way to do it.
I can't do very well.
Really?
Hell, you
seems like
Generation Y
it does
people
seem
with
like
your
it.
flared trousers and your text messaging and your MySpace.
You kids and your two thumbs.
Us Generation Xers, we were built. We grew up with a different way. We think we don't.
So
text.
I'm just happy to have learned that there is a website called Stop It AT&T. Stop it. And they came up with an interesting job posting from Apple for a carrier engineer responsible for day-to-day technical interactions with one or more carriers to track down issues reported by the cell phone carrier. The job posting for Kansas City, Missouri. Is there a carrier in Kansas City? Kansas City. Oh, Sprint's in Kansas City. Interesting, because as soon as this post went up on Stop It AT&T, the location of the job got moved to Cupertino. Which makes it even more suspect. So I think that means we will probably see a Sprint iPhone.
The big questions that I have around the iPhone is because most of the features I think are pretty well set. I think that the issue is like I find myself wanting to get an Android or wanting to get a modem because I want 4G. I want the 4G speed. And then I think that seeing it work on all the different carriers seems to be almost assumed at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And then near
Right. Once they unlocked the Verizon, the magic of Verizon to have the iPhone on 2 carriers in the U.S., I think from that point on, it was obvious that it's going to hit all 4 because I'm pretty sure the U.S. was the only country that had this sort of exclusivity agreement with AT&T.
Right.
Every other country has multiple carriers.
Yeah. It made sense. They needed to get a CDMA device going, but once having done that, there's no reason not to be on Sprint.
Right.
And T-Mobile, I guess, too, since it's a GSM.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think they're figuring that out, but I think the near field is going to be it's got to be coming close.
Yeah, that's the other. We talked about it earlier. The other big rumor is that Apple's really going to move forward with NFC, which allows you to wave your phone at a terminal and charge stuff or other things.
I think that if they released an iPhone with NFC, 4G, and a higher resolution camera, I think if that's all they did, I would go.
I really just don't see them doing this NFC stuff. And the reason I say I think they'll do it eventually, but where can you actually use this in practice right now besides Google's campus? Like, where's the actual? Other than them adding it to an Apple store, where else can I go and wave my phone and pay for stuff?
I guess my question though is that with the iPhone market as big as it is, it's who would use it once it was available on all these iPhones. With millions of iPhones, people would start using it pretty quickly. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between selling something to phone consumers and selling something to everybody. When you get to every CVS and every McDonald's and every Starbucks, it's such an uphill climb. I'm not sure if Apple really wants to get involved in that. And the second thing is that I'm not even sure that you talk about not Generation X, not Generation Y, but whatever it is that comes underneath Generation Y. I think that's going to be the first generation to simply trust the fact that I'm going to allow this device that's in my pocket, largely unguarded inside my pocket, to be responsible for making direct debit transactions. I mean, if you put if the iPhone 5 had that feature built in, that's the first time I would make sure that my iPhone was in a case at all times, and B, make sure that case were made out of some sort of copper mesh. It would be in a Faraday cage where I'm not actually using it. I'd be very, very concerned about the ability for someone to simply just basically surf next to it, brush past next to it, and get access to that transponder. Apple would do it very, very well, but I would not use that until I'd really satisfied myself that it's almost impossible for someone to commit fraud just by being in an elevator with me.
Well, if you feel that way, I have a feeling that that maybe consumers would feel that way. Maybe NFC is just not going to happen because of that kind of a fear.
Yeah, but I really think it's a generational thing. If you look at the technical specs for a lot of these things, it's exceptionally difficult. There was a specification that a consortium was trying to promote 3 or 4 years ago, that if it's done the way that the specification demands that it be done, it is actually exceptionally difficult on the level of it would take a government to be able to simply be somewhere within 10 feet of you and be able to transact with that chip. But you know how these things get implemented, that someone makes some suggestion somewhere saying, you know what, it would cost us $50 per transaction unit device in this store to make this secure. But you know what, if we just use this 2-generation old hardware, that would drop down to $10 per unit and would really be just as secure, honestly. So that's where the fear comes from.
I think the danger is that, the danger for any company that thinks that they can't pay attention to security is all you have to do is say is Sony PlayStation Network. Like if you don't think that it's gonna come back and get you, it's not the risk is really on their end of 14,000 people's personal information or 100,000 people's or 1 million people's personal information. It is that's billions of dollars of damage, that Sony's going to have to absorb. And so I think that is where companies that's why they'll spend a little extra on security. I know we've been our e-commerce our original e-commerce was built by guys that worked at the Department of Energy. And so the security guys. And so, we didn't know, we really couldn't get your credit card number. we couldn't get, you would order it, and it was so cordoned off from us. There was absolutely no way that we could actually get that. And so but that is you have to kind of pay attention to it at that level. I think that, I think the other thing though is that I think we are so much less secure than we think we are. When my wife will not, she won't do something. She wants to fax somebody the credit card number instead of talk to them. There's this.
Your wife, really? She's that smart?
She can get get into all of this stuff, but I'm just kind of like, and then there's a person on the other end that writes it down.
Right.
Or there's or you're talking somewhere and you're giving out your credit card number, or and when I
We're
ordered
screwed no matter what.
I know that's the whole thing. Is it's just kind of like you obviously need to take precautions, but you need to also realize that as soon as you walk out your door, you're not secure.
Right.
And even there, you're not really.
The future of the iPhone 4S or iPhone 5 or whatever it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be so much that they're going to be showing off great new hardware. They'll do some refinements to it, but I think the future is definitely going to be what they're adding in iOS 5, which I have no idea what they're adding, but I think software is where you're going to see them be highlighting a lot of stuff, is all the new OS features, because the hardware is good enough. I mean, they can adjust in a few things and tweak a few things to make you look like you're buying something brand new, but when they're highlighting things in the commercial, other than a couple of commercials, they're highlighting software.
I don't know if this is a huge story. Otherworld Computing, which sells third-party hard drives. I bought their solid-state drive upgrade for my MacBook Air, but very happy with it. Really added a lot of storage space, and they say speed, although it's so fast already I couldn't really tell. They say you cannot install third-party hard drives in the new Sandy Bridge iMacs. According to Otherworld Computing, Apple has altered the SATA power connector in such a way that removing the hard drive from the system, or even the bay where it resides, will cause the hard drive fan to spin at maximum speed forever. So if you place a third-party drive in there, even if it's the same model the app the computer was shipped with, it will fail the Apple hardware test.
You got to be brave to take apart an iMac, though.
I know. I did it once. I took this one apart. We put you have to use suction cups to pop off the screen.
You got to suck off the screen. Then you've got to actually replace the drive, and then you've got to put the screen back on and make sure you don't get any dust inside of it.
I have to say, though,
that big of a deal.
I brought my son's iMac, 500 gig hard drive died, and I, having put a terabyte in this one, decided I'm not going to take. I saw Colleen do it. I said, no way, I'm doing that. So I brought it to the Apple Store, and I said, can I put a terabyte in? They said, no, we have to, whatever comes out is what we put in. You cannot upgrade it. So there are limitations to what you can do in the Apple Store. You're stuck with basically the same hard drive. Hard drives do fail. You're not going to replace it yourself, and you're not going to be able to increase the capacity. It's going to be an Apple.
Although I have to say that the issue that I have now is that with Thunderbolt, to get back to Thunderbolt, with the Thunderbolt connection on the new one, you just do an external drive. It's going to actually be faster than the internal drive.
Yeah.
That's the...
that's really the typical Apple response. If you tell them, hey, this is terrible, I can't open up my iMac and do my own hard drive repair, their answer is, why would you want to put a Why would you put a larger hard drive in there when we can give you a much faster hard drive just by plugging it in, sir?
So it's got a beautiful screen. There's the suction cups. It's
like Mission Impossible.
Yeah, you need Spider-Man to get into it. You lift. Colleen did this. I saw her do it. Now, once you get that screen up, and don't drop it, of course, because it's glass. But then the stuff is fairly accessible. It's not such a big deal to do things like pull out the hard drive. But it is nerve-wracking to use suction cups and lift that big panel out.
Can you still easily replace the drives in the MacBook Pros, or have they made that more difficult too?
No, that's an easy, as long as you got the right screwdriver and it's easily available. Yeah, when I bought my new MacBook a few weeks ago, the first thing I did was crack it open and do some swap ins and swap outs.
Oh, good. Now, what kind of
RAM and hard drive are still really easy to swap out.
I bought my new Mac Pro has a SSD drive in it. Is it a full size SSD, or is it like that little card that they do in the Air?
I have a MacBook Pro, so it uses standard 2.5-inch.
It's just a regular drive.
HDD.
Okay.
So basically, anything you can put in a set of rails will fit in there.
I gotta put one in there because I like I want a bigger drive. 128 turns out to be too small.
Yeah, that's another. Can
you still fit the system on 128?
Oh, you could. Yeah. 64 is easy. So I did that on my Air, and you're right. It was even on the Air. It was very easy because once you remove the aluminum, it's all just sitting there.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been easier to upgrade the hard drive on that.
I think for me the big thing is that I've just been slowly externalizing all of my data. I mean, I think that when you get into these SSDs and I've been really focused on not getting bigger internal drives and really just having external access to it, or servers that I'm going to access or whatever.
It's for travel purposes for me. I just want a little more storage space for pictures and stuff as I travel about. All right, we're going to take a break. Coming up, our picks of the week. Justin, if you've got something, it can be your software. It's okay.
I've got things for you that are not my software, although you could buy my software if you do like me that much.
I could tell you that both Today and Elements have been previous MacBreak Weekly picks, even without you around.
And we thank you very much for that, Leo.
You don't have to worry about that. We love both of your programs. All right, let's take a little break. We'll come back. Actually, Andy's got a little recommendation for us because it's Audible time. Audible, that bookstore where you can get over 70,000 audio books. Just a wonderful collection. It's it's if I had to pick one favorite website, it might well be Audible because it saves my life pretty much all the time, whether I'm in the car, at the gym. There's plenty of times I can't hold a book, but I want to read. And it's really brought reading back into my life, which I love.
I got big long flights, and I'm stocking up. I'm ready.
Yeah.
It's every time before I leave, that's my opportunity to go to Audible and buy a bunch of books. And, what am I going to listen to on this flight? What am I going to listen to on that flight?
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. Well, I'm going to get this one. It looks like The Psychopath Test, A Journey Through the Madness Industry. But before we do that, let's... I do need this, however. I do want to give... Andy hasn't had a pick in quite a while, and I want to give him a pick. Here's the deal. You go to audible.com/MacBreak. You sign up for the gold account. Your first month's free. Your first book is free. So what we're giving you here is a book you can get absolutely free. You can cancel anytime. The book is yours to keep forever. And Andy, who is a big Audible listener, always has something of interest to pick. This is really an interesting one.
Yeah, this is a good one because, a lot of people know that I'm a big Audible listener and read a lot of books, and they're always asking me, Andy, has there ever been a really funny book written in Czechoslovakian about World War I? And I say, yes, there has. It's a book called The Good Soldier Schwenk, and it's a really remarkable book written in like the early 20s in Czechoslovakian. But it's a satire. It's a satire of war and culture and society in Europe at that time, and it's about this old like sort of worn out soldier Schwenk who basically makes his way through the army, through the culture, through the political situations of the time, and as sort of like a Lieutenant Columbo, where nobody is really sure if he's an idiot or if he is actually incredibly subversive, because he's the sort of person where if the commissar asks him, so how are things in the ranks, he'll say, oh, it's terrible. Do you know that it's okay except for when our captain is drunk and is seeing his mistress on the side. And then there's a lot of people who are thinking, no, he's just stupid and fault. And then there are people who are thinking, no, we must detain him. We must look at him. He managed to get through all kinds of interesting situations. But the thing is, it's not there to make you think. It's actually there to make you laugh.
He is the inspiration for Sergeant Schultz in Hogan's Heroes, I think.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of echoes in MASH and Catch-22.
Yep.
Basically, every single military comedy about people who are not fitting in well with authority, and basically authority being more or less incapable of dealing with someone as simple and direct.
It's a classic theme, isn't it? the Sergeant Bilko. It's a classic theme. I don't know why, but I've read this many years ago. I don't. But seriously, it's not well known, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So
I got to say that I was completely unaware about this book until 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was in a bookstore and I saw the illustrations that are as closely linked with this book as Tennille's illustrations are with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
I recognized The Good Soldier Schweik immediately over your shoulder.
Yeah. And so it was fun, and I am one of those people who's killing traditional bookstores because I could have spent $9.50 to actually buy this book in the bookstore. No, I took a picture of the cover with my iPhone. went back right from the iPhone. So, it's actually not only it's the ebook version is coming out later this year, but I can get the Audible version right now. Okay, I'll get the Audible version, and it's a great Audible version because this guy, sometimes you have readers who will read the text in one tone of voice. And then there's a guy who, well, I'm going to talk, this character sounds like this. Well, but he's talking to this clerk right now, and the clerk talks like this. It doesn't get on your nerves at all. It's actually a really, really good performance for a very, very great number of hours.
I can't wait. The Good Soldier Schweik. SVEJK, if you're looking for it.
Good luck with that. Just search for the Good Soldier and just go from there.
Yeah, there you go.
don't even try to Jaroslav Haslik. I'm sure you're not going to get the author either.
No,
Just,
no.
The Good Soldier will probably get you there.
It does. In fact, that's how I found it. Audible.com/MacBreak. Sign up for the gold account. Get your first book free. This could be one, but there's so many other choices. Bestsellers, business, classics, young adult, kids, teens, sci-fi and fantasy too. Oh, wait a minute. Fry's English Delight. Looks like there's some Stephen Fry on here as well. Audible. Audible.com/MacBreak. Your first one's free. But I can guarantee you won't stop at one. Audible.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support. Now it's time for our picks of the week. I've got one that I don't know. I'm going to start this time, and I don't know if Andy's tried this or not. I'm really going to defer to your judgment on this. This is an example of me finding something on the App Store that I said, wow, that sounds like something I could use. We've talked a lot about Scrivener, and I've used Scrivener for a long time. There's a program that's been around for just about as long as Scrivener called Ulysses. Are you familiar with that, Andy?
I don't believe I am.
It reminds me of Scrivener, but they call it a semantic text editor. They separate, the content from the presentation. So it's really good for screenwriters and novelists. They've got a lot of formats. It's very powerful. It's Scrivener-like ability to, for instance, save notes, to save parts of your document into a larger document. I particularly like the console mode. If you're somebody who's easily distracted, the console mode just gets everything away and off your desktop so you can type to your heart's content without being distracted. So this is for the ADD among us. It seems to, it has cross-link. It seems extremely powerful. $40, a very interesting program. So it's ulyssesapp.com. You can't get a 20-day trial on the website if you want to know a little bit more about it. And they have quite a few screencasts as well, so you can get a sense of it. It seems to be a very deep program. I don't spend as much time writing as I ought to. Maybe somebody like Andy would be better to review this, but I think it looks kind of intriguing. It's called, and I'd be very curious what you think of it, Andy. Ulysses, and it is on the App Store. It's been around since 2003. This is the newest version, which just came out, 2.0. Bookmarks, project templates, multiple notepads, fonts, colors, and that screen console that I think is pretty cool. Ulysses 2.0. If you want the free trial, get it from ulyssesapp.com. Otherwise, you can download it and buy it on the App Store. That has the advantage, of course, of being then available for all your computers, which is one of the things I like most about the App Store.
You're getting addicted, aren't you?
You know what? From day one, I said the App Store will be such a compelling experience for both developers and users that it has the potential to completely take over the ecosystem, and that's why I thought it was bad.
But you're still getting addicted.
Yeah, I was right. It's fantastic. It's too good.
It's like that heroin is going to be so.
It's heroin.
Oh, it's really good.
I actually be curious what Justin has to say about that. But before we do, let's ask you for your pick of the week.
Mine's pretty self-serving.
It's yours. Is it your software?
Pixelcore. We have a new app that MediaFly built for us.
Oh, that's
so
neat.
MediaFly built an app for our podcasts
for the iPhone.
Yeah. So have you seen these?
I have not.
So MediaFly is we're working with MediaFly, and
they do our stuff too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they built this little app for us that just lets you very easily see our Mac breaks and our other shows.
So Brett, I have to dim it down.
Yeah, but it's great. You hit that, and so it's a simple application that just lets you pop in. You can hit play on any of them, and it's just gonna go ahead and it's gonna stream it.
That's cool. And it sends it to video as well as audio.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So it's video and audio, and it's just a nice, great little application. And then we're going to be using a lot more of that. We've got a lot of new podcasts coming out this summer. And
I like these. We're really happy to be working with MediaFly because not only do they do these apps, but they get us on the Roku box and Popcorn Hour and Vizios and so forth.
That's what got us into the conversation.
Yeah.
And this is just something that they, and because it's what's cool is they're very flexible as far as like
wait a minute. You have unfinished? Oh, that means I haven't listened to them all.
Yeah.
And preloaded, those are the ones I've downloaded. Got it.
And they just threw this together for us. It's just the beginning, but if you want to see if you want an easy way to see And we're going to add a lot more to this.
It's
we
free.
can update it. It's free. So so go up to the iTunes store and download it. It's
Very cool.
It's a fun little way to enjoy.
And if I just search for
Pixel
Pixel Core, Pixelcorps, I'll be able to find it.
Yep.
Very good. It is time for you, Justin Williams. What is your pick of the week?
Okay, I'm going to go for an iPhone app this week, and it solves one of the problems that I have with the iPhone platform itself, in that I am dependent way too much on iTunes for syncing things. And one of the things that I'm always downloading and wanting to sync is podcasts, such as this fine podcast we're on right now. And so there's an app called Instacast for the iPhone.
I've been hearing a lot of good things about this. I've been meaning to download.
It's $1.99.
Yeah.
So you download Instacast, you can search, and it has pretty much every podcast that I had in my iTunes library showed up pretty easily in the Instacast search. You click on it, you subscribe, and then whenever you launch the app, it'll download your new episodes. You can listen to them in there. You can keep an archive of old episodes. And it's a really, really good experience. One of the problems that I've always had with iPhone apps that don't shy too far away from Apple's standard widget set is that they look really bland and kind of vanilla.
Right.
And Instacast is one of those apps that has taken it, kind of like what Tweety did back in the day. It's taken the default interface elements that Apple has had, added a few tweaks to it that looks like it's a natural implementation, and it's done a really good job of that. So I'm really enjoying this app. It's $2, which is insanely cheap for something that's so powerful. So check it out.
And it solves a problem that I've found on the iPhone, which is you can't subscribe to podcasts natively on the iPhone. You have to subscribe on the desktop. It gets downloaded to iTunes, and you have to sync it up. And
then when you're out traveling, you can't sync new podcasts because your iTunes library is back at home.
Right.
So I'm really whenever I download my podcast, when I come out to San Francisco for WWDC, this is going to solve a problem that I've had with not being able to copy new stuff onto my device.
Cool.
So
what's your take on the App Store?
Oh, I love the App Store.
Yeah, of course you do.
No, I've gone through. Here's the thing, though. I've gone through phases. When the App Store first came out, I was frustrated by it. I thought it was a terrible experience.
Now, are you speaking as a developer or as a user?
As a developer, I even went so far as to sell off my original iPhone business and say, I'm done with this. To hell with it. I'm going back to the Mac entirely. And then I finally it was too alluring to build stuff for the iPad that I came back and.
I'm talking about the desktop. I'm talking about the desktop App Store, though.
Oh, the desktop one. That's all I use now. Yeah. Desktop.
See, this was the conversation. It's so attractive from both point of view of users and for you too. Obviously, you were an Apple staff pick for today on the App Store. In fact, both your apps are on the App Store, right? Elements is on it too.
Yeah,
but I feel like it kills the ecosystem for just apps you download from a website.
In a way it does, in that it's frustrating that there's no trials, but in the case of today, I'm still offering it on both platforms. But as a user, I'm really hesitant to buy anything outside of the App Store ecosystem now because it is so easy just to get updates now.
Exactly.
Like, for instance, there was an app, I think it's called Carousel, which is a new Instagram client for the Mac, and it's only available through their website, and I think it's $15, but I'm more than willing to give them $15, but I'd rather give it to them through the Mac App Store so that I can handle the updates through there, which is such a first world problem.
That's why I do it. I want it to have the updates to go through there, but then only stuff that Apple approves can be sold there, and that's kind of my problem with it.
I think the thing for me is, as someone who is constantly testing a lot of different laptops and hardware and everything else, being able to sit there and download across anything that I'm signed into, and I'm just like,
all my purchases are all in one place. Although what's going to happen is this gets longer and longer and longer, right? There's no way to remove this. I cannot right-click on this and remove it. This list of purchases I'm talking about. It's going to be too long to use.
I think they'll reorder it. I mean, I think that you and I buy a lot of apps.
I bet everybody does eventually.
But I have to deal with the same thing. I feel like the way to deal with hundreds of apps for your iPhone and iPad is painful. In iTunes. I mean, I still do it, but it's turning them on and off. I have a bunch of different iPhones and iPads, and so turning them all for the kids or whatever, and I'm trying to turn them all on, turn them all off, and it's painful.
I'm just mostly worried about the fact that this just means Apple has total dominance and gets to approve every app ultimately. But,
I'm not worried about it yet, but if they did get to the point where they stopped allowing third-party apps to be installed outside of the App Store, that's when I would be concerned. I don't think they can do it. I don't think they can.
I don't think they will.
It's just
I just don't think I think it will be it will become that way by just default because most users will not even bother. They'll just say, if it's not in the App Store, it doesn't exist.
So you can build your store in the warehouse district, but no one's going to be there.
Yeah. That's what really concerns me. It's the suburbification of computing. All right, Andy Ihnatko, your pick of the week.
This is an app for the iPad that I've wanted ever since I heard there was going to be something called an iPad. It is Omni Outliner for the iPad. Yes, and I'm afraid I've got the sample Omni Outliner documents here because my Omni Outliner on the Mac is so important to my day-to-day business that I can't show you my Omni outlines because that's the outlines to all the books I'm working on, every idea I've had over the past 3 or 4 months, notes that I take during meetings, during briefings. It's not just an outlining app. It's so flexible that it really is kind of an app that lets you build a solution to any problem that you have that involves collecting and sorting and managing information.
See, I've been thinking about buying it, but I was going to wait till I heard from you, Andy.
Yeah,
I'm so jealous of that app. It's so well done. It's insane how good it is.
And it's really such a difficult nut to crack because when you have the Omni Outliner for the desktop is a very, very elegant, simple, and powerful app, but you have a mouse interface, you have all these windows, you have all these elements. How do you solve the problem of putting all of that simplicity on a screen where you always have to be tapping things? And so there are a lot of really nice little solutions to this. They put like the outlines, the dots and the arrows and the pointers to indicate for hoisting and collapsing things. That actually has its own column on the left side here. But really, there's about a 10-minute or 15-minute learning curve while you figure out how you translate everything that you would normally do with a keyboard and a mouse to how you do it with gestures here. But after that, it really is just double tap on anything to start typing. This is a new line, and then if I want to indent that, here's a tab, here's a button here for goodness, I should probably zoom in here so you can actually see what I'm doing. Yeah. So I mean, it's just very, very simple to write outlines, continue to edit and move things along. It will support a million different, basically any sort of thing you want to do. There's also and if you're not just doing outlines, if you're just using it for things like tabular data, here it is, and I'll zoom out a little bit. Believe me, someday I'll have my own Skyposaurus and I can figure these things out. But here we have like a big list of tabular data where it's being used kind of like more like a database than anything else. And given that you've got a limited amount of screen real estate here, it's smart enough to know that the first column, if you have multiple columns in your outline, is probably going to be the important one. But if there's too much information to scroll it off, it will simply keep that first column in place to continue to scroll off and see every single item in the table that's related to each item in here. It'll deal with long. You can have items that are long notes instead of single lines of text. You can have pictures as items. You can have URLs as items. It supports WebDAV. It supports iDisk. It supports exporting via iTunes and email. They tell me that, they say on their site that Dropbox support is something that they're actively looking at. I hope they're very actively looking at it. And it's completely file compatible with the original Omni Outliner. There are some features in the desktop version that, because you're running it on iOS and not Mac OS, that simply aren't supported. But other than that, pretty much every single outline that I have going on my desktop, I was able to simply copy straight over. And now I have all this data and all this information that I run my life, my business on just right here. It really is. I almost, within the first hour, I'd elevated it to an essential app. Because once again, you can't really prepare for every single app you need and every single situation you're going to be in. If you have Omni Outliner on your iPad, there's an excellent chance that you can simply build the data collection or the data manipulation or the calculation app that you need just by expressing it as an outline. And with the features that you got here, you pretty much have all the tools you need to get that thing going. So $20, which is not cheap by iPad standards, but it really is a no-brainer purchase for someone. And at least for me, it was a no-brainer purchase.
I get it. I was just waiting to hear. Omni
Outliner. There's 3 apps I use on my iPad predominantly. One is my own, and 2 of them are from Omni. I use Omni Outliner, which has just come out, but it's already become so integrated into my workflow. And then OmniFocus for the iPad is by far my favorite version of OmniFocus. It's fantastic.
Interesting.
So those guys really understand the iPad. And like I said, I'm insanely jealous of how talented they are. I wish if I had that Google $100,000, I might be able to afford to be that awesome.
I have to admit, I do all of my diagramming in OmniGraffle, and I just have to. People ask me, but I'm like, I think in OmniGraffle. Like I just think like that's how we plan everything.
I buy all their apps and never figure out how to use them. Really, I just that's my problem.
But look, is it on the right side here? Dang, it's not. But they're just so clever in figuring out ways to make things work. Like you can either when you're designing an iOS app, you can either decide that, well, for every feature, I'm going to add another button to the interface, or you can come up with clever things. I want you to look at that side of the screen for the button that will add a new line. If you tap and hold, it brings up actually like a little palette of extra buttons. So if you want to simply say, actually, no, I want to add something above this, or no, I want to add something that is already indented for the next thing, you don't have to tap and then move it a second time. You simply tap and then stroke it a little bit.
Love that.
Really, really smart. There is a small learning curve. There's some things I didn't understand until I watched the video that was on the site. But 5 minutes later, I really felt like I was 98% up to speed on this. So good stuff.
And this just in, noteworthy, not a new application, just a new font.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm still in business, guys.
This is why we don't do breaking news on this show. We get it wrong almost every time. This just in, noteworthy, according to the iOS weblog, is a font you'll find in iOS 4.3 replacing Chalkboard. It is better looking than Chalkboard.
Okay, so that's one fewer thing that we'll be hearing about in the WWDC keynote. I don't know what they're going to be talking about now, but now that this whole font situation's been blown, maybe they'll have a little in-joke about it.
You already know about noteworthy. Andy Ihnatko is at the Chicago Sun-Times.
I just want to say one thing about it.
Yes.
We look at Andy's presentation.
I know.
Here.
He's so good.
He is. But I mean, like someone needs to get like a couple clips over the last year or two.
How it's improved.
It is like it's like every week now there's something else tweaked.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there's the lighting gets a little bit better. Are you tinting the windows right now? Are you?
Well, see, this is
raining out there.
Well, no, this is
the lighting's right.
Yeah, I went to Amazon saying, no, I really had it with all these blown out windows. I'm going to spend $50 or $80 for that special tinting. And then I decided, or I can go to Target and buy this like sort of like pantyhose material like curtains I can put in the back. They'll get the exact same thing. I've got blackout curtains on that window over here. It's just a case of like week after week, it's like, oh God, that looks like crap. Oh.
But I feel like now we're getting to this point where every week we see something new.
His standards are better than ours. That's the problem. Thank you,
because
Andy.
but realize that like you guys, when you get into the new studio, the first show is going to be brilliant. With me, realize it took me like a year of like just via the Braille method, feeling my way around.
I'm perfectly
here's a list
content.
of 1,000 ways you could possibly set up and do lighting. I've worked through number 778, and now I'm starting to get to the point where so we've eliminated all the ways of doing a crappy show.
I love it. And is that your picture? Is that Grand Central Station? What is that picture?
No, that is a picture I shot with the GoPro, the still video mode, the still photo mode. That's the grand entrance to the Boston Public Library, believe it or not. Awesome. It's up on my Flickr feed. It's using the GoPro's 5 megapixel photo mode. It has a really wide angle lens. It's one of my favorite pictures for the past couple of months. Only because it's such a if you come to Boston and you have if you have one day to go, devote an hour or two to visit the Boston Public Library. It is just as Fenway Park is a cathedral of baseball. I can't think of any American library that is even more of a cathedral for learning. And I include the New York Public Library too. The Boston Public Library just kicks the butt of the New York Public Library, just as a beautiful building to come in and read. Obviously,
I don't know why, but I'm thinking of The Simpsons where Homer brings Bart to a library. And he says, wow, what's this? He says, it's a library, son, a place where bums go to bathe. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to bring down that.
Magnificent facilities of the Boston Public Library. Marble cisterns.
Where bums go to bathe. Mr. Alex Lindsay is ahead of the Pixel Corps, pixelcorps.com for the Guild of Multimedia Artists Learning and Working Together, pixelcorps.tv for their great podcasts. Don't forget to find them on iPhone now with that MediaFly app. That's very cool.
You know, having some fun. We're going to have I can't wait until the new studio's open. That's all I got to say.
Yep, they're moving
We're gonna
in
have a lot
with
of
us. They'll be on the other side of the bricks.
Yes.
They're on the inside of the bricks. And Justin, I'm so glad you joined us. Justin Williams from secondgearsoftware.com. Everybody should run, not walk.
Run, people, run to the app stores.
And get
Thanks for having
Today
me
and
on again,
Elements.
guys.
Great stuff. We really appreciate you.
My favorite iPad word processor is Elements.
Yep, it's just beautiful.
And maybe someday I will actually ship Elements too. Someday.
We'd love to see Boldface someday, but until then, still a very lovely word processor.
Thanks
One
for
day,
being here.
Andy, I will share with you the pain and suffering that is building rich text on iOS.
Thank you for being here, Justin. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us. We do MacBreak weekly as soon as we can get everything working, which usually around 2:30,
But I got to
3
tell you,
o'clock
the first
Eastern.
if you're coming in live, the first half an hour is the best part.
The part where we tear our hair out. And
We're having fun. You see Leo working on the,
Yeah, do tune in. It starts the Mirth and Merriment starts at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, live.twit.tv every Tuesday morning. It's my first show of the week. That's why I'm a little discombobulated. You guys, I don't know what your excuse is. And don't forget, we are selling bricks. You can have your name engraved on the new Wall of Fame, Wall of Honor in the Twit Brick House right there in the front door. You come visit your brick. Find out more at bricks.twit.tv. Thanks for joining us. You know you want one. Get two. Get two. They're small. Thanks for joining us. Now get back to work. Break time is over.